Hello and welcome to The Bottom Line. We're going to continue the discussion from the last program. I personally am finding it fascinating. And between times, I heard from Dr. Greg that his mind is like a filing cabinet now because he's got so much information, has been investigating and been involved in this, both in ministry as well, for many, many years. But before we get into it and pick up from where we left off, let me read a scripture to you from Ephesians 6, chapter 10. Paul, writing in this letter, says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand. Stand therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you are able to quench the fiery darts of the wicked one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints." We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness in high places. I have to say, Greg, I'm not sure, in all the years I've been in ministry, and probably you too, I'm not sure that Christians are always geared up to deal with these things, which makes them vulnerable. And I don't remember how often I've heard teaching on putting on the whole armor of God. So just in the last program, we ended talking about occultism, and Greg has been involved in this whole area for many, many years, looking into it, investigating it, ministering into it. And so we want to pick that up again. I want to know from Greg what he knows about how deep occultism goes in the various nations of the world, particularly while we're here in the U.S. So, Greg, can you enlarge a bit on that for us?
Well, if we go back to Flashpoint 1, which is Lucifer falling from heaven, Flashpoint 2, Adam and Eve falling into sin, and then you fast forward to the Tower of Babel, which was the beginning of this occultic world system. And we read it where it says that they built a tower to reach the heavens. Actually, the language says they were building a tower to reach into the heavenlies. It wasn't height. It was dimensional.
Oh.
Because God, when he closed the door to Eden, said, "You can't come back here." And the occult world, it's been trying to open that door ever since.
Okay.
And have that realm where the fallen angels live in our world in a more active way. Because, you know, we need to understand the devil's not all powerful. He can only be in one place at one time.
Yes.
You know, I hear people say, "Oh, the devil's attacking me, I've got a headache." Well, he's probably not attacking you. He's probably somewhere whispering into somebody in Congress's ear that they should do something.
Yeah.
You know, more important
And
stuff.
you haven't had enough coffee, that's why
Well,
you've got a
that's
headache,
probably
maybe.
it. Yeah, it's a demon of no caffeine. But, you know, there's a reality of how much Satan is limited by what he could do. So he has, and Ephesians is very clear, there's powers, principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places. Why are they in high places? Because they cannot have full access here. That's why when Daniel talked to the angel, he said, "I'm battling the prince over Persia, because there is a limit to their access." So everything the occult does tries to open up the doors of the supernatural world, of God's realm, to try to use it for nefarious purposes. So the Tower of Babel was basically the center of all one world religion's beginnings. And then you fast forward maybe, I mean, this is a lot of fast forwarding, but you go into the time of Madame Blavatsky that started Theosophy, and she taught that there were 5 root races, I believe, that started the whole world, and one of the root races were the Aryans.
Yes.
And from that, we can see Adolf Hitler's beginnings,
Yes.
because he was so entrenched and trained in the occult. And later, they actually spoke of the man across the Rhine that they thought perhaps could have been the one they were looking for. So you see, even back then, that they were looking for that one person to lead everything.
Yeah, that's interesting, because he used to, as I recall from history, he used to actually consult with mediums about the direction of the war.
Absolutely. And his SS men were practicing occultists that took over the Velvesberg Castle.
Yes.
And did rituals down in the basement. So
Yeah.
he was all in.
Yeah.
But obviously failed to reach their goals. But it's always been about that man of sin, the Bible calls, the lawless one that's coming to bring everything into, I mean, the final flashpoint is going to be the Antichrist rising, bringing all the world religions together, including the false church. And that's where it's so important that we cleanse the body of Christ, because those that are not cleansed by the Word of God from all this wickedness are going to fall into this, and they're going to follow the Antichrist when he comes as being Christ returned.
Yeah.
And because they don't have the biblical basis to understand that's not how it's going to happen. So that's why they're trying to blend all the world religions together and say that we're all one, you know, we're all in this together, and all those buzzwords.
I understand, Greg, you may know this. I understand that there's going to be a meeting September 2020 with the Pope and other world religious leaders to discuss the formation of a one world religion. And based on what you were just saying.
I can see that coming. One of his last homilies that he gave 2 years ago is where he had a Muslim and a Jewish person and a Christian and a Hindu all brought out their symbols for God together. And he said, love is the center of it. We're all one because of love. And so, you know, we've known this is coming ever since I was an early Christian. You know, had Hal Lindsey writing Late Great Planet Earth.
Yes.
That guy was so spot on.
Yes.
You know, God bless him, still out there doing ministry.
Yes.
But it's all leading to that point. So people have to be acclimated to all things regarding the occult and think of them not as bad things, but as good things. It's all part of the whole package. So it's enmeshed in every area, every culture, everywhere. We shouldn't be surprised, because the kingdoms of this world now don't belong to Jesus. There will come a time where it says the kingdoms of this world will be the kingdom of our Christ. But that's upon his return. In the meantime, all these things are in place working against Christ to form a world system, because Lucifer still thinks he's Lucifer.
Yes.
He still thinks he's the rightful heir to the throne of God.
Yes.
And so everything that you see in the world, and I try not to get political, so I'm not going to, but I can tell you that what's happened in our country politically in the last 4 years threw off the agenda of the European Union and the Luciferian Center, which is in Belgium, that powers the European Union, set them back like 15 years in bringing us on board to the one world system. I think now, because of COVID and because of all the violence in the street, without a miracle from God, we're going to be right back on schedule, and they'll very easily be able to bring us into their system. So we know where it's going, which is a good thing. But you have people in all levels of society, and I know in other programs will go into things like Hollywood and the occult and all that, but it's enmeshed in Hollywood, people in Congress, people in the judicial system. I could lose my standing in this city very easily by just describing some of the stuff that's entrenched in this city, people in high places that are not from God, that are making ungodly decisions that nobody knows about. So it's steeped in our society, obviously.
This is so interesting, because you mentioned about Belgium, etc., and we know, the part that Europe's going to play in the end times. And as a British person, although I don't live there now, but as a British person, I was personally glad to see them get out of the European Union, to be honest. I know they're not fully out yet, but it's coming. And then you mentioned Hollywood. So are we saying here that, in essence, what the enemy of our souls is trying to do, what Luciferianism does, what the occult is doing, is to bring about a whole range of influences in different areas to lead us to the point where the Antichrist will eventually rise up and be seen to be acceptable? And is that why we get so many Hollywood stars getting into the political realm and making their statements about who to support and who not to support and all that kind of thing? Is that all part of that occult stuff?
It is. And the Antichrist system is a multi-headed hydra. It's a multi-headed beast. And I think Hollywood is one of the major heads of that beast.
Okay.
Because it promotes everything that Satan is about.
Yes.
From the destruction of normal sexuality to the normalization of pedophilia.
Yes.
To all the occult movies that come out, music industry the same way. So many of these people have made literal commitments of their lives to the enemy to get where they are. And some will tell you that very openly, and a lot of it's very hidden.
Yeah.
But I think the voice of Hollywood and the music industry is doing more to brainwash and to destroy a generation of youth than anything else that's out there.
Right, right. And how deep is this really going, Greg? You know, we got Hollywood. There may be some subjects or some areas you can't speak on because of, for obvious reasons, wisdom maybe. But how deep is it going? Is it in government? Is the occult in government as well as in Hollywood and other institutions?
It is, and it's on different levels. I mean, I know there's some legitimate Christians in government, and I can, it's pretty easy to tell who they are. But there's a lot of them that belong to secret societies, and this is the kind of thing that if you can say it, fake news want to call conspiracy theories. Well, we've been uncovering conspiracies. A conspiracy is simply two people who decide to do something together. And so conspiracies are real. It's figuring out what's real and what's not. And there's a lot of smokescreen conspiracies.
Yeah.
But there are definite cabals of people in government that belong to secret societies that are very old and very ancient, and they're sworn to the secrecy of that. Some of them are a little bit more open, but if you were to open the books of the rosters of people in government that have been part of secret societies, you would find out there's a significant amount of people in politics and in the judicial system. The judicial system is crucial to what they do.
Yes, yes. I read somewhere, and I can't quite put my finger on it, and I don't even remember the man's name, but he was very senior in the Secret Service, and he is a practicing witch, I guess would be the right term. That sort of thing is going on?
It has been for a long time. There was, when we were doing a lot of the occult crime investigations, we came toe-to-toe with a lieutenant colonel from the Army who was the designer of the psychological warfare unit, who was the head of Egyptian temple called Temple of Set, which is across the United States and around the world. And he was committed. He wouldn't call himself a devil worshiper, but it was the Egyptian version of that, the god Set. And he had a powerful effect on the military that is ongoing to this day. He's apparently, we found out he's gone on to his rightful reward. Hope he found Jesus in that last moment. But his influence was profound back in the day in the military, and continues to where some elements in the military are still using black magic and things like that to accomplish their military goals. It's quite a concern.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And you've been investigating occultism and Luciferianism, etc., for, I think you said, over 30 years. What conclusions has that led you to?
One of the conclusions was, and this is probably, we could do a whole another show on this, but between
maybe we will, yeah.
Between 1985 and about 1995, there was a wave of occultism, Satanism, witchcraft, you name it, that hit this country and other countries like Great Britain, like Holland, we trace this all over the world,
Yeah.
that like a wave swept over the nations, and it took a lot of youth with it. That's how we got involved. When I moved down here, and that's why I got involved, because I was still kind of working out some of the stuff from my own background, because it was pretty dark. And I knew I came to Jesus, but it was all these years, when am I going to talk about it, because it's part of my testimony. And I found a lady here in El Paso, her name was Sue Joyner, and she had started a little ministry called the Watch Network. And she was teaching little classes for churches on occultism, to just warn them about things. And it was at a time when we were on the cusp of this other wave, and the next thing you know, we're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, extracting kids out of the occult, working on ritual child abuse cases with daycare centers. There was a huge one here in this town, and we were just knee-deep, and then we started to get asked to do training for law enforcement. And we had to just take the little bit of information we had and develop it as we went along. So in those 30 years, it was a bloodbath, I'm going to tell you.
I can imagine.
But something happened in '89 where everything changed, because they had somebody within the federal government saying this stuff did not exist. They had an organization called the False Memory Syndrome Foundation that rose up to say children were lying about being abused.
Wow.
And then we had a Christian newspaper out of Chicago writing a series of articles saying, these people that say they came out of the occult are frauds, don't believe any of it.
Wow.
And they completely gutted us within 3 years. We went from 250 investigators, pastors, safe houses, whatever, therapists, down to, I think there was like 5 of us.
At the end of that?
Yeah.
That's a serious decline, isn't it?
Yeah, it was very well done. It was a brilliant plan. It worked very well. I'm not applauding them. I'm just saying we didn't understand what we were up against. Now we do. But in retrospect, what I learned from it was that whole period was like the Antichrist, the anti-John the Baptist, preparing the way for the Antichrist. They had to have that kind of blanketing of our whole country in occultism, and the blood rituals that went with it, unfortunately, to empower the enemy to be where we're at now. We would have never dreamed we'd be where we're at now.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest takeaway for me.
I mean, one of the things that we have in common is that, and I think I shared this with you the other day, that I used to train police officers in child protection, because I was a child abuse investigator years ago back in England. And I was at the police headquarters, training headquarters, one day when the head of the training department said to me, "Do you know anything about ritualistic abuse?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "Why are you asking?" They said, "Well, I think we need a course on this, because our police officers are coming across cases of ritualistic abuse more and more frequently. And so could we put together a training program?" And I said, "Well, there's an issue first of all before you can put a training program together. You're calling it ritualistic abuse. Let me ask you this. Do your police officers believe in God?" Well, she was stunned. I said, "So because if they believe in God, they'll believe in the devil. And if they believe in those two entities, as it were, they'll understand ritualistic abuse. Otherwise, it's just another case." That training never got off the ground, because obviously we're down into spiritual things now, and they couldn't quite see it. So now you, in that 30 years, that's a lot of years, Greg, and you were saying that you had about 250 investigators and so on, and because of the interference of government and other news media, etc., you got down to 5. Have you been able to rebuild that at all?
Well, we've got some young guns on the block that have risen up in the last couple of years. A couple of really good young friends of mine have a program, actually, a YouTube channel called Through the Black. And they're not afraid to tackle any of these issues. And they were trained by kind of one of the old guard like me on these things, and they take it very seriously. So there are some people rising up and saying, this isn't over yet. because kids are still being abused. Young people are still getting caught up in the occult, and they're not afraid to take that on. So I'm very glad for that. They did a video. I hadn't even heard of these guys until a couple of years ago, and they were doing a film called Detestable, which was testimonies of people who actually had gone through ritual abuse, and they called me and asked me if I would consider being part of it. And at some point, you kind of say, look, I gave it the office. I want to go have a nice iced tea on the porch and, ponder my wasted youth. But I had to just think about it. I said, okay, well, God, if this is what you want. So we flew out to California and filmed a part of this film, which just this week made it to Amazon Prime, which is...
Oh, really?
So I'm trying to up my life insurance policy. Because it'll get the attention of the people who are in charge, because they were pretty convinced we were done. And all of a sudden there's this other voice coming out of nowhere saying, no, we're not done. We're coming after you.
Yeah, and you're back in the picture, as it were.
Apparently so, yes.
Yeah. Has your life been threatened?
Many times. Many times. Yeah.
Because of your stand against occultism and so on.
Yeah, and they've been somewhat, I got, it was a few years ago, just before one of the events we had, there was a phone call on my phone saying, I'm going out tonight and I'm going to blow your brains out, just be ready.
Oh my goodness.
And the guy showed up, and he had a trench coat and kept reaching for his, never had an open shot, but, that was real.
It's pretty close.
Had break-ins in my house.
Yeah.
Had a break-in one time. This was just weird. They just broke in. I was gone for 2 hours, and they put like 30, 40, 50 little red cat paw marks all over my carpeting. And my first reaction is not fear. My first reaction is, I hope it's washable, because, I don't want to replace the carpeting. Then I took pictures, because nobody would believe it if they didn't see it. Sure, yeah. At that point, it was probably just wanting them wanting to know they can, if they want to.
Yeah.
We hit up against the big boys at some point, the real big boys, and things got real ugly and real messy. And I had to at some point go before God and say, I am totally convinced that without you, I'd be dead in a moment.
Right.
But I don't go until you say I go,
Right.
like Tozer said.
Yes.
We are immortal.
Yes.
So God's finished with
Yes.
us. So,
Yes.
by
Yes.
God's grace.
For the viewer's sake, and I don't want to take you where you can't go for obvious reasons, but you use the term the big boys. What are we talking about there?
And we can go into this area another time, of course, but one of the things that happened to me in working a local case of an ex-police officer that was a pedophile, I started to look into that case, and all of a sudden this door opened in investigation and understanding that there was an international pedophile ring that was going on that reached it up all the way into some of the highest realms of our government, including the Bush 1 White House. And that somebody actually was running a call boy ring out of Washington that had access to the White House. And so and there are certain elements in government that part of their modus operandi, if they want to operate, is they've compromised government officials, congressmen, senators, by arranging special parties and bringing in children.
Right.
And having these people engage sexual activity with children. I know it sounds unbelievable, but this is the truth.
Yeah, I know.
And then go to the senator a month later and give him the pictures and say, we just want you to know, we're not going to do anything with these, but if we need you to do something, you're going to do everything we tell you to do, or all of this goes public, goes to your family, your life's ruined. So when we understood that there are elements of our government, those were the big boys. And they know how to push back.
You can't get bigger than that.
Yeah.
You can't get bigger. My goodness me. Because that's some serious influence, from the big boys, as it were. That's a tough one to tackle. Do you just walk away from that, or do you find other ways to find your way into it, as it were?
Well, one of my good friends down here at the station frequently, I'm sure if he sees us, he'll know I'm talking about him, and we were working these cases together. He says, don't you get tired of just going after the little fish? Don't you want to get the big fish? I said, yeah, but I used to fish with my godfather when I was a kid, and I realized something when I studied fishing later. If you get enough of the little fish out of the shallow water, those big fish will come in looking for food. And then we can get them. So the best thing we could do is take away their trade, take away their prey, take away their victims.
Right. Greg, we've got, I think, probably about maybe 2 minutes or so left. I would like to continue this discussion in our next program, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely.
Because you touched on another subject, and I think it's got to be all connected and related, and that was pedophilia. That's always been an area that I feel has while it's exposed in a sense, it's a bigger issue than we realize, I think. And if you don't mind, I'd like to talk more about that, because I'm sure in your 30 years of investigation, you've uncovered a lot of information that I think it would be good for the viewers to hear about, particularly in the times in which we live, which I believe to be the end times. I believe we're coming to an end now. That being the case, I do want to point out the fact that this hourglass has got nothing to do with the length of the program. It speaks to the fact that we're living in the last days. It speaks to the fact that time is running out. It speaks to the fact that Jesus is coming back again very soon. You've heard some very interesting pointers in this particular program. And some of you watching may be victims of some of the things that Greg has spoken about today. And I do use the word victims in a very determined way, I think. That, and you may need help. It may have stirred up something in you. It may be that you've been searching for a way out of your situation. And if that is the case, please make contact with us. We can put you in touch with Greg and his ministry. He's had years and years of experience of dealing with this kind of issue: pedophilia, sexual abuse, occultism, all manner of things. There's so many subjects that we could cover that I know that he has worked in. And if you are a victim of any of those things, if you are searching for a way out, if you feel trapped, if you are being abused physically or sexually, if it's domestic violence, whatever it is, please make contact with us. Let us find a way to help you. Let us talk to you about how we can support you out of this situation. You know, God is our be-all and end-all. I think I could put it that way. He can find the way out, and we can help you do that. This is something that we are interested in. It's something that we want to be able to offer you in terms of a service to this community. So please make contact. Telephone, write, whatever it is, and we'll put you in touch with the right person to help you out. Thank you for watching The Bottom Line. It is the bottom line. People are in need in a desperate way. Let us be the ones to help you, and don't forget what this means. Thank you for watching End Times TV. Thank you for watching The Bottom Line. God bless you, but don't forget, get in touch with us, please. Thank you.